live and we are ready. Welcome to On Point with Wandel Stokes. And of course, today is a special conversation, and not only special, but it is a critical conversation about Project 2025, protecting our future and our communities, and certainly democracy. And you have to ask yourself, with all that has been released in the details of this document, hundreds of pages of document, Project 2025, you have to ask yourself, how will you be impacted by this? How will it affect you in terms of education, climate control, health? All of these questions should come to your mind. But guess what? We have the panelists today who are going to be sharing with us their insight, their expertise, so that you can be in the know and be made aware of what's happening with Project 2025. We've got to expose it. We've got to educate. We've got to make you aware of what's going on and how we can impact you today, but also tomorrow and other generations. So I have an array of panelists who will be coming today to share with us. So don't you go anywhere. Our first guest panelist, and I just want to say this about Nancy Flake Johnson. She is a fighter for freedom. She's an advocate. She's a coach. She's an educator. She does a lot in the community, and she is one who champions the cause for closing the racial wealth gap. I want you to welcome at this time the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. I am certainly glad to have you on this conversation today because you sit as part of the brainchild of all of this. Why would you say, Nancy, it's important to really have this kind of conversation?
Perfect. So it's so important because all our elections are important, first of all, right? Yes. Every time they roll around, not just presidential elections, but also our state elections, our counties, our cities. Every one of those elections are important because the decisions that the people we elect make directly affect our daily lives. And it sets the tone and the tenor of how our country works and how our communities work. This year, more than in my lifetime, it's even more important because we have in front of us a document that, if followed by whoever the next president might be in this country, it would totally rework the way we know our way of life. And it's called Project 2025. And it's been developed by the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank that's based in Washington, D.C. It's over 900 pages, as you indicated, and we just can't really stress enough how critically important it is that nobody stands on the sidelines this election cycle.
But a lot of this is on the line. And when we talk about Project 2025, will this just impact, if depending on who gets into office, will this just impact us in the current day, or will some of these changes impact our future?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Will it impact our future? Project 2025, will it impact our lives in the future and not just for today?
Okay, so let's start with the fact that first and foremost, this report is called a presidential transition plan for the next conservative president. And in this current election cycle, there's only one candidate that fits that description. Should this plan be adopted by the next president, the first thing it calls on this president to do is declare executive unitary power. And what that basically means, it would vest the majority of the decision-making in the hands of one president. And that is dangerous for our country.
Yes, it is.
So today we have experts on your panel that are going to talk about the details of the plan, how that translates into everyday life, and how we want every one of your listeners to have the opportunity to go into that ballot box, understanding what each candidate brings to the table. We encourage people, do your personal research and include in that research Project 2025, because it could have sweeping changes and really take away a lot of the protections that our federal government provides for our daily lives.
That's great. That's great. Why is it necessary to address Project 2025, to our Black communities, in particular, all of our communities? Why?
All of our communities would be impacted, but in particular, Black communities, there are several provisions that would directly impact us at a different level. So number one, the Department of Education would be demolished. Now, what does that really mean for the everyday citizen? What that means is that each state would then have the authority to determine whether or not it supports public education. The majority of our students rely on
That's
the
right.
public education system. And we all know education is the foundation to a future life that can lead to security, financial security, opening doors of opportunity for employment and for entrepreneurship, right? Without the federal government, employers would not eliminate discrimination in their hiring processes.
Right.
If we can't have access with knowing that every employer is required to hire us based on our skills and our capabilities, as well as access housing, those are fundamental to everyday life. If you
Yes.
can't be assured that when you apply for an apartment, that you will not be declined based on your race. And let's face it, even with these safeguards currently in place, many people still continue to face discrimination in these sectors. But we have the protections in place to file complaints, to require investigations, to report these practices so that employers or any institution that is practicing discriminatory practices, that they can be reported on and investigated so we can break down those barriers. One of the other important aspects is with respect to and we already know that the the previous administration stacked the Supreme Court with conservative justices that have made several rulings
That's right.
that are taking away the rights of women when it relates to the right to health care, make
That's
their
right.
own.
Yeah, it's designed to take away all the rights. We have to think about how our communities will be impacted, whether food, water, medicines we consume will be safe, whether our
Healthcare
roads or
choices
bridges. Yeah,
with respect.
absolutely.
So Urban League, over the next several months, we will be partnering with media and community partners like WAOK to make sure that people have access to this information. It is in the plan is right on the website of the Heritage Foundation. You can get to it, anyone can, at www.project2025.org. We want people to get their hands on it for themselves. There are
Absolutely.
also several synopses that are out there. So if you don't want to read the whole document, there are some trusted sources where you can get the answers.
That's great because we want you to have the answers. We'll go to break. Nancy Flake Johnson sharing with us this morning from the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. We'll go to break and we'll be back with more on News and Talk 1380 WAOK. And so stick around. We've got more to come in just a moment. Just bear with us because we are on live video and as well as audio. So we're coming back in just a few moments. Just bear with us. But like and share while you are watching, while you're tuned in. Make sure you listen, get on the phone and call your community because this is that important. Just think about climate change. Just think about how we would be impacted by that. Think about our voting rights, our human rights, whether or not they will be respected or even protected. Think about a leadership structure that has the voice of only one.
Yes,
There's no accountability, right, Nancy? There would be no
there is
accountability in
no,
place.
that's
Yeah.
right. And, so
Greater Atlanta, Thursday, August 29th at 10:30 a.m. Project 2025 Exposed, Protecting Our Future and Community. This on-point exclusive panel discussion will feature U.S. Representative the Honorable Jasmine Crockett, Nancy Flake Johnson, and Joe Moye with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, Tara Murray of the National Urban League, Representative Derrick Jackson, and Christopher E. Bruce, Esquire, from the ACLU. Don't miss this crucial conversation about the future of our democracy. Tune in and stay informed on News and Talk 1380 WAOK. Download the Odyssey app so you won't miss it.
We are back live right here on Point with Wandel and Stokes. Listen, we are broadcasting live on 1380 WAOK. We're also live visually on Facebook and on YouTube. Go to WAOK 1380 WAOK on Facebook. Nancy Flake Johnson with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. Is democracy and our future communities at stake? I mean, we're talking about taking away the power from the people. Is that something that is
yes.
of great concern? And even also, as you take a look at the origin of this Project 2025, what do you say, Nancy?
Project 2025 was spearheaded by the Heritage Foundation, and it includes an advisory board that consists of more than 100 conservative groups. Now, under the umbrella of this 100 groups, there are more than 400 scholars and policy experts that are contributed to this plan. The team's creators, the two that led it, are former Trump administration officials. One is Paul Dans, who was the chief of staff at the Office of Personnel Management, along with Spencer Cretion, former special assistant to Trump, and now also still associated with the project. Dans announced just recently on July 30th that he and departing the Heritage Foundation. And you may recall that interestingly happened right around the time that the real buzz about Project 2025 started to hit the general public. And the former president was being pressed to either say, hey, is this really the plan that you intend to execute if you become president? Interestingly, right around that time, Dans did step down. Don't know for sure if there's a direct correlation, but coincidentally, they happened right about the same time. Much of the focus actually involves its first pillar, and that is the nearly 900 plus page policy book that literally lays out an overhaul of the federal government. The recommendations outline, they go agency by agency, and it covers every corner of the federal government, from starting with the executive branch of the president to the Department of Homeland Security, and to even to the Export-Import Bank and others. Now, why is it necessary for us to address Project 2025 in our Black communities? It's because our everyday lives are touched by how our system of government operates. So let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. First of all, we know how is to our community. Many of our families cannot afford private education for our kids. In fact, we feel that we are really entitled to, we deserve a quality public education simply by being a citizen of this country. So we need a strong system of public education of the Department of Education would affect us here at home and on the ground. We also want to make sure that our food, our water, our medicines that we consume are safe. The federal government is the body that sets those criteria for us and enforce that all providers of these goods that we consume in our bodies, that they meet these standards so that we can be safe. Whether or not our roads and bridges are built and repaired, a lot of those resources come through. All of us know the extreme heat that we've been experiencing, the storms. We know we have environmental issues that are causing a lot of these extreme conditions, and they affect each and every one of us.
Absolutely. And how does this actually also look at our tax dollars? Will our tax dollars be spent in this Project 2025 the way it's proposed? Will it be spent to uplift people or really take away resources from people?
Well, if the dollars we're putting into the federal government, if the government itself that currently provides a lot of those systems and supports, whether it's food stamps or health care for our most vulnerable citizens, Social Security, if it's being dismantled, that is an excellent question. Where would those dollars go? Well, one of the things we know for sure, it would go heavily into defense and to other conservatively directed programs and services. Power in the executive branch, what it really does is it waters down the power of the people, Wandalyn.
Yes,
we can hold Congress accountable. And how is that? Because we elect our representatives on a periodic basis. And if we don't like the job that they do, we, the people, have the opportunity to not vote for them and get new people into these roles that are going to advocate for the needs of our people. Whether it's judges, judge appointments, our Senate, our House of Representatives, all of these roles, we contribute to determining who sits in these seats. And concentrating the power in the executive branch, the presidency, would really hold one person, would hold the power for at least 8 years. And what to me is more concerning is that if a person comes in and adopts this Project 2025 roadmap, they would dismantle our essentially could, and we've even heard one of the candidates say, vote just this one more time and you won't have to vote again. I'm unclear what that means, but I know for one, we need the power to vote to continue.
Yes, we do. And that's why we are doing this type of panel discussion and calling on you to make sure that you consider, read the document, Project 2025, even as Nancy Flake Johnson is sharing certain parts about the document, how it will impact our roads, our environment, our health, our rights, our living, our lifestyle, services to people who are in need. This is going to be a major impact on the people, and that's why we've got to talk about this. We will continue this conversation with Nancy Flake Johnson. Also, we got Tara Murray coming up, as well as other special guests right here on Point with Wandolyn Stokes. Also, the Honorable Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is coming up next as well. So stay connected. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. This is great. You covered a lot of information and content. Those of you who are watching now, we're on break, just doing a commercial break here, and we'll be back shortly with.
But while we do that,
Yes,
let's encourage your listeners to register to vote if you haven't. The deadline is October 7th. But most importantly, we want those of you who have registered to verify your registration.
That's important.
Right?
Yeah.
People are being purged from the rolls almost daily, it seems. So we want to make sure that especially if you have not voted in one or more elections in the last several years.
And you won't know that if you don't go and find out, find out your status, find out whether or not you've been purged.
That's right.
Because there's so many things that are being done, even especially here in Georgia by the Georgia State Board of Elections, to purge names as well as to delay the process of even certifying. And we talked about some of that on yesterday. So that's why we want to make sure that all the listeners and community, do your due diligence and making sure that you go check your status, make sure everything is good and with you, so that you don't have any problems.
It's My Voter Page Georgia
Mhm.
is where you go. If you just type that in any browser or even say it in your phone, My Voter Page Georgia. And your zip code, I think it is, or address, and it'll tell you your status in just seconds.
Yeah.
And if there's any issues, please take care of them right away.
Yes. And also, do you encourage people to do early voting this year, Nancy?
You know what? Especially with all of the efforts of the Georgia Election Commission right now, in the moment, changing the rules at the last minute like this, we are definitely encouraging everyone to vote early as possible. Early voting opens up, I think it's October 16th. We'll verify that before the end of the broadcast. But as soon as you can, make sure you vote. We have just a early voting. Take full advantage because we know people work, right? And sometimes you can't make it to the polls before work or after work.
Right.
But
right.
take advantage of the weekend voting. We're really going to need that. And if you vote absentee, get your it as soon as possible, because we all know the challenges that we have had with the mail system. It's just ridiculous. And honestly, we are encouraging everyone, if you physically can, vote in person. But if you need to vote absentee, just do it early.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you made that notation there. If you can, certainly vote early. Let's continue in this discussion, Nancy Flake Johnson. We have the Honorable Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who's joining this conversation. Project 2025 Exposed. And we want to welcome her to the conversation along with Nancy. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, are you here? Now, our special guest certainly has purposefully made every decision with one goal in mind, Jasmine Crockett has always been concerned about protecting civil liberties, even of those in underrepresented communities, as a public defender, civil rights
Our
attorney,
democracy. Tune in and stay
state
informed on News
representative,
and
and
Talk
even a U.S.
1380
Congresswoman.
WAOK. Download
And
the Odyssey
she's
app so you
coming
won't
up
miss it.
next to share with us very shortly about her feelings regarding Project 2025. We're going to break and we'll be back shortly. Let's see, and we'll get her on. We are live 1380 WAOK. Go to our YouTube page as well as our Facebook Live so that you can hear and see who we're talking with today in this conversation. This is very critical, and we wanted to certainly bring this conversation to the community. And that's why Nancy Flake Johnson with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta said, let's do it. Let's make sure we get the information out. This is a serious matter. She has been out in the community, out in the other events coming up later on this month at Clark Atlanta University, and all of that, things that we're going to be doing to get the word out about Project 2025. And so as we continue this conversation, it is live, and you may have questions. Make sure you write those questions down, because soon we'll be taking questions from our audience, as well as, like and share. Share this right now so that everybody can be made aware. Are we ready now? Let's see. Let's check in with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, her office right now, and let's see. Hi, a pleasant good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Good to see you
I'm
again.
well. How are you ladies?
We are
We're
doing great. Listen, there's three of us on here right now, and this is such a serious conversation about Project 2025. You've always been representing the underrepresented as a public defender and a civil rights attorney and state representative and U.S. Congresswoman. Tell us about what made you dedicate your life, to public service with the goal of serving justice and ensuring, equality for all people.
It's interesting because I've been asked this question over and over, were my parents lawyers? Were they engaged in the civil rights movement? All the things. And the answer for all of the above is no. I am the only lawyer in my family on any side. And, while my parents went to vote and they are both college educated, they weren't necessarily what I would characterize as like the freedom fighters. And so, I think if anything, it comes from the fact that my dad is a preacher. And so I've always kind of grown up in this space in which they raised me to be an empathetic person. And, I really detest any type of injustice that is around me. And for some reason, as you can see, I've got Shirley Chisholm on this side of me, and I've got Barbara Jordan, and I have my predecessor, Eddie Benice Johnson. But I made these photos. And so it's the three icons and then me. And so I've always as well felt indebted, because I know that my journey is an unlikely one, and that there were these amazing trailblazers that could not see themselves, but somehow thought it was important enough for them to get out front and to try to do the things that most people probably told them was impossible. And so I do feel really indebted to my ancestors. And I do feel like not only is it my obligation to carry on and have them smiling down from heaven, but it's also an obligation for me to continue to make sure that I am opening even more doors for those that are coming behind me. And so that starts with just really understanding how I got here in the first place. And then, listening to people who have consistently felt like their voices were not being heard is something that I wanted to give them the opposite of. I wanted them to see that government can work and what real representation does look like. And so I show up every day as authentically me. And, I think the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world probably assumed that only Black people would really care about me showing up authentically, not recognizing that all people can sense who is real and who isn't. And even if you don't agree with things that I do, you understand that I'm coming from a very genuine space. and therefore you tend to be endeared towards me in some way.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. How would you describe the political climate in the U.S. today, Congresswoman?
I'll say it like this. My predecessor had been in politics for 50 years. She has served in the U.S. House for 30, and then she's only the second and last Black woman to ever swear into the Texas Senate behind Barbara Jordan. And she was one of the first 2 Black women to ever swear into the Texas House. And when she tapped me, she said, it's time. It's time for me to go. And she said that it has really turned into something that she's never experienced. Now, you're talking about someone who literally swore into the Texas House with Sarah Weddington, who was one of the attorneys on the Roe v. Wade case.
Yeah.
And for her to say that it's basically gotten so bad that it's beyond what I've seen, that is saying a lot when you are, shattering glass ceilings yourself, coming in as the first of so many things. And it's worse. It tells us that, as you've been discussing Project 2025, that Project 2025 has been underway. Project 2025 seeks to set us back and put us back into, the Jim Crow era, if not take us even further back. And for people that literally lived through Jim Crow to feel as if this is kind of the worst, that's not a good sign. That's not a sign that America is moving in the direction that it should be.
Yeah, definitely. What are your thoughts on the current criminal justice system now?
Yeah, the criminal justice system has never really worked for one group of people and always worked for another. As we have consistently heard of a 2-tier justice system.
Yeah.
I would say that there always has been a 2-tier justice system. The difference is the guy that is complaining about it has always been in the category of those that has been treated with kid gloves versus those folk that maybe look like me, the Sonia Masseys of the world, the Breonna Taylors of the world, the Sandra Blands of the world. Obviously, I specifically chose Black women,
right,
to name, but we know that this is a criminal injustice system that has harmed so many Black and brown folk. Literally, if we are just kind of walking down the street and just trying to breathe, as that I'm making an obvious reference to Eric in New York. I will say that our criminal justice system looks a lot like America does in general. It is an imperfect system that needs people that are constantly trying to better it and have it live up to what it was originally intended to be, at least on paper, right? Like, and so, we all want to be safe in our homes. I don't know anyone who says, hey, let me be a victim of a crime. We all want to be safe. But what does safety look like for all of us? It honestly looks a little different. It's like when Black folk have to have the talk with their children and other folk are like, what is the talk, right?
Right.
And then what does it look like when certain folk can say have over 80 indictments that are outstanding and pending and somehow not be held behind bars pre-trial, right? So when people start talking about, bail reform and people be up in arms, and it's like, listen, there's a presumption of innocence. And if we are going to afford certain people a presumption that keeps them completely out of jail, never having to spend a night, then surely we can find a presumption for somebody that's got a drug charge. We can find it for a person that, has whatever type of charge. And obviously, we do take certain things a little bit more seriously if somebody is charged with capital murder and murder and things like that and whatnot. But, the reality is that we still have a lot of work to do on this system so that it can start to epitomize what this country says, which is equality for all, right? Or starts to live up to this idea of blind justice.
Yes.
There's a lot of work to be done. And I think that that's why it's important that we have diverse voices at the table. Because my experiences, while I've never been incarcerated, as a Black woman in America, I can tell you that I've had so many of my cousins that have been incarcerated and other family members. So not only have I been involved in the system from the standpoint of defending those that have kind of found themselves on one side of justice, but also from a very personal standpoint, from friends and family that have been incarcerated. And so, you know, it adds to hopefully coming up with a system that understands that mental health should not go to jail. Mental health should go to a
Right.
hospital, just like any other health issue we have
That's
should go to
right.
the hospital. I hear the music, so I
Yeah.
will be quiet.
I'll go to break, yeah, for just a second, Congresswoman, and we'll go to break and we'll be right back. It's On Point with Wandalyn Stokes right here on News and Talk, 1380 WAOK, Project 2025 Exposed. And when we come back, more with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. We'll be back.
Good vibe.
So this break is probably just a minute or two, but we're still live on Facebook and YouTube, and just on this backstage, so to speak. How does it feel to be a voice and an inspiration to women, and just a voice for people? How does it feel?
I will say that I've always been me. So
Okay.
it's really weird, um, to be honest, for people to be inspired and to hear their stories, or to even have little girls that come up and cry to me,
Mm,
because I am still just plain old me in my mind. But I'm also humbled that God would decide that this is the purpose that He put on my life. And I am doing everything that I can to honor this great responsibility that he has afforded me to have. It's a responsibility that, you know, less than 1 in 60 Black women, or I'm sorry, not less than 1 in 60, but we've had less than 60 Black women to ever swear into the Congress. And it was one of those reasons that I felt so conflicted as I told the story about the vice president and I's first interaction, was just this idea of, I really should be so happy in this moment, and I really didn't know if I should quit.
mm,
It was a conflict, because it's like,
okay.
child, you have been privileged, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, not really feeling like I was making a difference, which is the only reason I ever went to Congress. It's like, what am I doing? Like, this is a waste of time. Like, I could be
Yeah.
doing something more productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it feels good to be uniquely you, and it just goes everywhere you go. I mean, because you're you.
Yes. Yes.
So you've
Came
always
up with
been,
me.
yeah, always been outspoken, always speaking
Always.
for the people. Yeah.
Always. Entire life. This is definitely nothing new.
That's good. That's good. What do you think about this, the U.S. Supreme Court?
I would toss the majority of it if I could.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I'm a member of the court reform task force that we started. It's myself, Jamie Raskin, Madeline Dean, Hank Johnson, Adam Schiff. And we have 3 bills that we really are trying to elevate and push. One is for term limits, instead of kind of these lifetime appointments, as we now see that the executive branch, along with cooperation from the Senate, can really abuse the judiciary, and unfortunately can change the trajectory of our country for lifetimes. And so we can't just entrust that people will do the right thing anymore. We've got to put up guardrails. And so one of those guardrails would be if we go ahead and do term limits. The reason I talk about the potential for abuse is because we know that they failed to give Obama an appointment.
Yeah.
They held off, denied him that. And then Trump went and had one of the justices step down, which is the only time I've ever seen that in my life that I can remember. But
Yeah.
he had a justice step down so that he could elevate another. And then, of course, we had the death of RBG, and they changed the rules, and they actually forced through their nominee quicker than the amount of time that was left on the clock for Obama. So having that type of callous behavior take place, and really laying it out that this is something that somebody could do, we really need to go ahead and put term limits, because then we know that there will always be a continuous changing of the guard versus waiting on somebody to die.
Right, right.
So it'll feel a lot more fair. Number one, we also want to expand the court. The court has been expanded at least 7 times in the history of this country. The last time was maybe a little bit over 100 years ago, though.
Oh, wow.
And so when we think about it, there's a number of reasons to expand the court. Number one, we've grown a little bit over the last 100 years, which means that there's a lot more court cases that are coming through and that kind of stuff. So to be able to kind of handle the volume of cases, for sure we should expand the court, but also the level of complexity of cases as we continue to kind of go to next levels is a big deal. And I will
Yeah, that is a big deal, sharing with us about your thoughts regarding the structure and the setup and term limits of the Supreme Court. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, right here on point with Wandel and Stokes. As we continue this conversation, make sure you like and share, because this is a critical conversation for all to hear and know. Jasmine Crockett, what are your thoughts about what stands out to you in Project 2025 that we really need to pay attention to? I know there are a lot of pieces to this 900 plus page document, but what are some of the things that you want to highlight to make sure the community knows?
So I'll highlight some things that people don't talk about as often. For sure, freedom of press. That's one of the things that's not really discussed very often, but I think it's really important for us to talk about, because as we are living in this age where, Fox News ended up being sued and had to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in a judgment for putting out false information. It really is trying to create a Russia in the United States, where the only news that's allowed is the news that, say, the dictator wants to get out there in the form of propaganda. And I just don't think that there's, that's not real freedom. Same thing around religion. It seems like the very basis of this document, and almost every part that you look at, is about indoctrinating people into a Christianity that I am unfamiliar with. They have redefined what it looks like. In my opinion, it looks a lot like the Christianity that they used to justify slavery back in the day. And so every part of our life is really supposed to have kind of like their ideals, from not being able to have birth control, from obviously they're going after abortion and things like that, but also just the idea of no birth control. Looking at those that have families that maybe you disagree with based upon your definition of your Christianity, and basically saying that they aren't allowed to exist, or they aren't entitled to be able to adopt kids. Or the fact that if we look at this document and think of it in their religious context, it's not really affording an opportunity for freedom of religion, for you to be able to worship in the way that you worship, or not worship at all. And overall, it's just kind of this consolidation of power into the executive branch, with getting rid of the Department of Education, not really having a separation between the executive and the Department of Justice. We see that there's a separation right now. People may not recognize it. The President of the United States appoints whoever is going to sit as or actually nominates who will become the Attorney General for the country. But the reality is that we see a sitting president who has a child that has been taken through that criminal justice system, because they do operate independently. And basically, this is going to allow somebody like Trump to potentially be able to get rid of that independence and start going after and prosecuting their political enemies. And finally, we know, as I talk about the ancestors and I talk about those that come before me, and the women that are on my wall that paved the way, it seeks to consistently get rid of our civil rights protections. And that, for me, specifically as a Black woman in America, is just completely unacceptable.
It seems like they're preoccupied with Black women and with women at large, sexuality, identity, leadership, and all of those things. And it seems to suppress women at large. And that's why it's so good to have individuals like yourself, Congresswoman, to be in positions to help to make change. Let's get Tara Murray on from the National Urban League office, who's going to join us as well. As you're hearing Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, what is your initial response to some of the things that she's already highlighted about Project 2025?
Well, thank you so much, Wandalyn, and Nancy, who was on earlier, for hosting this important discussion. I'm really honored to be here speaking with you and sharing about the work that the National Urban League is doing to stop Project 2025 and our Project 2025 campaign. I think everything that we've heard just is raising the alarm bells about how critically important this conversation is, but also what's at stake in this upcoming election. There's so many concerns with this Project 2025, with what it's going to do and what it's going to mean for our democracy.
Yes.
Really would dismantle it. And so we need everyone to be engaged. It's all hands on deck.
That's good. That's good. I like that. And Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, what would you say to Black men who may say, I don't need to vote? VP Harris has locked up so many Black men. What do you say to that type of language and rhetoric that's being placed in our country and society?
Well, one of the things that I've made sure that I've told people as I've gone out on behalf of the campaign is that I want Black men to talk to Black men, because I think that some of this is about who the messenger is.
Okay.
So I've done my best to not try to tell Black men or make them feel, just by the message coming from me, emasculated in any way, but having kind of like a brother to brother conversation. I will say that it is important that we do our research. We've got access to all the information. And one of the people that I love, adore, and respect, even though we go back and forth a lot, is D.L. Hughley. And we saw at DNC that he decided to tell the entire world that he made a mistake. And I will also say that I do understand, because I told DL this personally. I told him, because he was really beating up on himself. He was like, I don't know how I got caught up. Because he's a very intelligent person.
Yes, he is.
And so I do want it to be clear that misinformation and disinformation can confuse any and everybody. That's number one. Number two, I do want to make it clear that it's okay if you fall for the okie doke, to the extent that we know the harm that prosecutors typically have caused our community. So when somebody says something bad about a prosecutor, it is easy to believe it because we have seen the harm up close and personal. But again, when I spoke at the DNC, one of the things that I did is I wanted to credentialize her as the type of prosecutor that we would have wanted with Breonna Taylor. I was sending a message that she is our type of prosecutor, right? Because on one hand, we can't say that all prosecutors are bad and say all they do is lock up people and then get mad when they don't prosecute, the bad officers and things like that. So I think that while I understand how it's easy to fall for it, I think that this election is too important for you to just fall for the okie doke. And so I just encourage people to do their research. Don't necessarily believe what I put out into the atmosphere. There are plenty of receipts that you can go and look at from what she did back in the day, as well as look at legislation that she has tried to bring forth, whether it was as a senator or even some of the work that she's done in the Biden-Harris administration.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation today. And we appreciate all the work that you're doing and continue to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you
our
so
prayers
much.
are with you.
Y'all.
God bless you. Yes. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sharing with us today. Tara Murray, this is so important to you, and you're very passionate about this conversation. Tell us about why the National Urban League has launched this campaign, Stop Project 2025.
Yes, well, the campaign is part of our broader mission. We're a historic legacy civil rights organization. We've been fighting for 114 years to defend civil rights, to protect democracy, and to prevent the erosion of the freedoms that disproportionately impact our community. And so this campaign, the Project 2025, the Stop Project 2025 campaign, is one of our major initiatives that we rolled out this year that is designed to counter the far-reaching consequences that we've been discussing here today of the far right's Project 2025 agenda. And as Congresswoman Crockett mentioned, our ancestors and our forebears in the civil rights movement fought hard, they bled and died to secure the protections that we enjoy. And so we must, in this moment, prevent the rollback of these hard-won freedoms. And so, you know, we're happy to be moving forward with this campaign, and want to engage everyone, all of your listeners, and everyone around the country to stop Project 2025.
Absolutely. And that's what this whole conversation is centered around, doing so. How can people, Tara, find out more information from the National Urban League about this campaign and the other great things that you're doing?
Yes, so you can find more information by visiting our website, nul.org. And I want to just share that the campaign really seeks to mobilize our community to take action. You know, we must be united against this well-funded attack. And in the lead up to the November elections, we're asking everyone to take an active role in safeguarding our democracy so that it actually works for all of us. And there are 4 ways that you can do that, and you can find more information on our website. The first is by engaging with this election. You know, take time to understand what's at stake, listen to debates, attend information sessions, and most importantly, vote at all. Right? And we've been talking about that today, and I'm sure some of the other panelists will discuss that as well. And not only vote for yourself, check your registration status, but also bring people with you to vote. Ensure that you have a voting plan and that you are encouraging your family and friends to also participate in the voting process. The other thing that folks can do is share information. There's a lot of information that's been shared already today, and they can share this information to ensure that their family and friends know about the threats of Project 2025 and how we can stop it. And then also reaching out to members of Congress. You know, Congresswoman Crockett was on. You know, Congress can do more to take action to stop Project 2025. And you can reach out to your Congress member today by texting Stop Project 2025 to 52886. You can send a message to your Congress member letting them know that you want them to stop Project 2025. And the last thing that I'll say is that it's important for folks to know who you're voting for. So the National Urban League has created a candidate comparison and evaluation platform on our website that you can find along with information on Project 2025, and that's nul.org.
That's great. Then thank you so much, Tara Murray, for what you're doing. This campaign, I'm telling you, we've got to get the word out as much as possible to encourage people to get to know what's happening, what's going, and also to take action. And that's what it's all about. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And anytime you need us, let us know. Thank you so much. You're more than welcome. Tara Murray from the National Urban League, right here on Point with Wandle and Stokes. We're going to go to break on 1380 WAOK, and we'll continue right here live on Facebook and YouTube with On Point with Wandle and Stokes. We'll be back with more. We've got other guests that are coming up, and we are talking about Project 2025. We're talking about putting a stop to it. We're talking about you knowing and being informed as to what Project 2025 is all about. In these efforts, Nancy, it's endeavored to cut Medicare and Medicaid.
Because we're talking about the possibility of life changing as we know it. You know, when I read the Project 2025 synopsis, what came through for me personally is that the work we do at the Urban League, calling out systemic racism, would make us enemies of the state.
Yes.
That's what we do. That's what we have to do to, you know, really hold the country accountable to living up to its creed. So when you think about bringing back capital punishment, who do you think would be on the receiving end of that with the mass incarceration problems we currently have? And, you know, one of the things I do want our listeners to know, that our current situation as it stands, we know there's a lot of work that we have to do, no matter who's in the driver's seats of all of these levels. But we've got to have the ability to fight. We've got to have the ability to demonstrate. we've got to have the ability to vote and elect and exercise fundamental freedoms again, or we're going back to civil war days. And when you think about it, in my lifetime, I was refused service at a restaurant with my family. This isn't hundreds of years ago. So when we say we don't want to go back, or we don't want to roll the time back, it's not that long ago. It's just in the 60s that the civil rights movement was at its peak. So we've got to put the pressure right now to lean into one another and have our own agenda as well. And I love that about the National Urban League movement.
I do too, because I know in our previous conversation you talked about, our own strategy, our own game plan in terms of what we would like to see happen and how we can mobilize and galvanize people to work towards making it better for all. Because with this Project 2025, it will not render support and service to all. It's supposed to be for the American public. And what are your thoughts about Project 2025 when it comes to the Department of Justice with the proposal to have it independent? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that one scares me almost more than any of the provisions, because we already have issues with our criminal justice system, as
Right.
Representative Crockett shared. So it means a lot. We have to have the ability to have power over who judges are. We have to have power over the way justice is carried out. Without the federal oversight, I'm extremely frightened about the power that states could put in the hands of police forces, sheriff's departments, police departments. We have a candidate that has talked about there have been conversations in the conservative sector about giving all police officers immunity for any police involved shootings.
Right.
Can you imagine what that would look like? We've already got fights on our hands.
Yes, we do.
It's just incredible.
Yeah, it is. It is. And also in this proposal with this Project 2025 is to cut taxes for, Trump's rich friends and pad their profits. And then, of course, create really two classes of people, the elite and then the lower class, an attempt to really push everybody towards a poverty level. This is not democracy, would you say, Nancy? Is it?
It's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not human. There's no human sensitivity there. We're struggling with massive individuals with living in poverty now.
That's right.
Can you imagine if food stamps were taken away, if subsidized rental assistance was taken away, if health care was taken away? When I think about a society that looks like that, it's extremely frightening. In this plan, protesters would be felons.
Yes.
Simply protesting.
Yes.
And that's fundamental to the civil rights movement that got us where we are at this point.
Absolutely. It certainly has. We are live right here on Point with Wandalyn Stokes. We're talking about Project 2025. Nancy Flake Johnson with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta sharing with us, also other guests. Let's welcome to Nancy to join us right now, Representative Derrick Jackson. Derrick Jackson, he represents Georgia's 6th District. He's a retired veteran of the U.S. Navy, corporate general manager, adjunct professor, and nonprofit board member, 7-year tenure with General Electric as senior marketing director. Welcome, Representative Jackson. How are you?
It's great to be with two phenomenal sisters. Listen, I am blessed and highly favored to be with you all to discuss a very important topic that could negatively impact the Black and Brown community. So thank you to my big sister, Nancy, what you all do at the Urban League, and Wandala, man, listen, 1380, we need 1380 WAOK
Yes.
to tell our truth, as my good fraternity brother, Derrick Bozeman always said. So, but listen, it's great to be with you all.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Tell us, what are some of the ideologies of Project 2025 that concern you the most?
You know, I've always been concerned about Republicans, right? You have to ask yourself, how did we get here? Well, in 1981, Wandalin, that they had a document back then for President Reagan, right? And so we've seen this play, and now we're living out a sequel. But back then, though, it was very different, though, right? The touch and feel was different. This 3,000-page document back in 1981 talked about family values and patriotism and small government, right, Nancy? Fiscal conservative. But now let's fast forward. The Trump era, they started recruiting something very different and ugly and dark. And what scares me the most about Project 2025, although it's a little bit different than that mandate for leadership in 1981, they took that and discard some of the good that could be moderated, but Wandalin, now they got some horrible stuff. Project 2025, for example, not to repeat anything that my sister down there in the great state of Texas, Jasmine Crockett and others, but I want to come from a different perspective. See, Project 2025, Wandalin, is going at the heart of the Constitution. It's going to take a sledgehammer against the Constitution. For example, for those who need some specifics, because I read a good portion of that 922-page document, it's going after the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 19th Amendments. Let's break it down real quick. The 13th Amendment did what? Abolish slavery. The 14th Amendment gave us citizenship. The 15th Amendment wanted to gave us Black folks the right to vote.
Right.
Those three alone we refer to as the Reconstruction Amendment, because it tried to remedy some of the initial injustice of the Constitution, right? To say, you know what, we started off wrong on the wrong foot, so let's make this somewhat right. So let's abolish slavery with the 13th Amendment. But now Project 2025 says anybody that they declare as an immigrant, Wandala, they don't say who's an immigrant.
They don't.
But what they will say is we're going to deport 18 to 20 million immigrants. So we could be classified if they remove the protections of the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and 15th Amendment. Because, by the way, they're also trying to bring up Dred Scott decision.
Right.
Okay, right. But they didn't read that the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment nullified the Dred Scott case of 1857. Because they're trying to use that against Kamala Harris right now.
That's right.
Who is considered to be a citizen?
Yes.
Who is eligible to run for the presidency of the United States? The other thing that concerns me, Wandala, is this. It's one thing what they tell us. It's something else what they're not saying. They have another amendment called the 180-day transition, which is not open to the public.
Right.
In 180 days, if Trump would have wins, because I'm saying he ain't gonna win. We're gonna stop that. We got a Project 2024. Our Project 2024 means he ain't gonna win. But they got a 180-day transition plan where they're going to dismantle the whole federal government. They're going to abolish some agencies and departments. As it was already mentioned by others, Nancy mentioned some, Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett mentioned some. So that's the other thing that concerns me. The last thing that concerns me most about this, about Project 2025, what kind of democracy that says we're going to consolidate everything into one area of office? That's the executive branch.
That's not democracy, though.
That's not democracy. I mean, that is a autocratic king. It's the thing that 248 years ago that they said they didn't want.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of things concern me about Project 2025.
But see, I think with this Project 2025, they see the next president as their hero, as their leader who will quote unquote save America. You know, that's the ideology behind it. And this is our chosen leader, Donald Trump. How will Project 2025 impact veterans and our senior community?
Listen, as a retired military officer after serving this country for 22 years, Project 2025, I think it's chapter 20, if my memory serves me correctly. It talks about how it would dismantle the Veterans Administration. I mean, listen, it's one thing to send those men and women who said, I want to serve my country, they put on the uniform, but it's something else, Wanda, to say we're going to dismantle the Veterans Health Administration. They want to privatize it. And we all know that when you privatize something, it's about the bottom line number and the top line number.
That's right. That's right.
You do not care about the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, is it currently flawed? Yeah, there's some areas that we need to improve. So I'm always about improving, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about reform and dismantling and destroying.
That's right.
The Veterans Federal Program that takes care of not only those men and women who are in uniform, but it also takes care of families.
That's right.
There are provisions in there that help take care of our families, Wanda. And then the last but not least, before I talk about the senior citizens, it also reduced personnel costs.
Yes.
In there's a statement in there that says we're going to bring retired medical doctors out of retirement. Now they done served, they in their 70s, 80s, and we're going to let them treat our veterans. Huh?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Let's go to break and we'll be right back with more, but we're going to continue this conversation online. All right. News and Talk 1380 WAOK. It's On Point with Wanda and Stokes. Representative Derrick Jackson, you were talking about our seniors. How will it impact our seniors as well?
Yeah, it will. Listen, I'm taking care of my 87-year-old aunt.
Okay.
My uncle would have been 92. He did 4 years in the Air Force. And so my 87-year-old aunt is living off of his military benefits and her Social Security. Project 2025 will not only remove the provisions of Social Security, it's going to increase retirement age. Now, in one area, it says it's going to increase the retirement age to the age of 70. And then the other area says it's going to increase it to 72. Either one of those numbers are bad.
Right. Either one. Right.
Right. And so, but to remove Social Security, but they're not going to stop there. They're also going to remove the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, how that takes care of our seniors, and Medicaid and Medicare.
Yeah.
And so when you start talking about you are now
families and seniors,
it's going to devastate families. It's going to devastate children who needs it, families, and those who already paid into the system. Because I cringe every time someone says, "Oh, it's an entitlement program." No, when you pay into something, you make deposits. You're looking for an opportunity to make your withdrawals.
That's right.
It's just like the bank, right? When you put money into the bank, you should have the ability to take money out of the bank, right? Mm-hmm. And so we pay into this program.
Love that, Derrick.
Okay? It's not an entitlement.
These are our dollars.
These are our dollars. And so now you're going to say you're going to increase tariffs,
right?
10 to 20%. And we all know when somebody says we're going to increase tariffs, that comes back to the consumer. That increases our taxes, right? And so all these areas where the tax dollars go into, Social Security being one, it's probably one of the largest areas of our budget, federal budget. And this should not be used as one's piggy bank.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And so it would devastate our seniors. It would devastate those who, like my aunt, at the age of 87, she's beyond her ability to work. She's beyond her ability. She was a registered nurse for 50 years. So she's done her part.
Yes, she has. Yes, she has.
Right.
What do you say, Representative Jackson, about Like, who's funding Project 2025?
Oh man, there's some rich billionaires, and some of these billionaires are not even Americans. Elon Musk is not an American. He's from
You're right.
Small place in South Africa, Pretoria, something like that.
Yeah.
And then Peter Thiel is not an American, rich billionaire. He's from Frankfurt, Germany. And so you have two individuals who do not have citizenship in this country who are fueling Project 2025. But here's the other piece. Before we start talking about who's funding it, why is it that Project 2025 is very different, again, than the 1981 document? Well, because there's a gentleman by the name of Kevin Roberts. In 2003, get this, Nancy, he did his doctoral thesis on the enslavement of Black people in Louisiana, how to control Black people. So he went back to the days of slavery. Out of all the things you can do your doctoral thesis on,
right,
get your PhD, right? Because he started off as a history major. You're going to decide to look at how plantation owners control slaves back in Louisiana back in the 1800s. Out of all the things you can do your PhD on.
Right.
And so when you understand this man's mindset, and he is the primary author of Project 2025, but also 140 MAGA Republicans who also assist in the creation of Project 2025. In fact, 30 of them who were directly in Trump's cabinet and his administration are also doing the training videos. You can go right there online to the Project 2025 website, and you'll see the same individuals where Trump said, well, I don't know him, I don't know her.
But you know all of them because they're lobbyists and loyalists to Donald Trump. And but it's a mindset, I think, that's really being revealed to the world. This is nothing new, like you mentioned before, but it's just being revealed. It's about controlling a certain race of people, Black and brown people, controlling, regulating everything about their life, their health care, where they live, the amount of money, their jobs. They only want them to work certain jobs as well. And so we're seeing this go, back and forth. When you think about the family and when you think about voting, how do you tie that together, Derrick?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And here's the thing I would say. The reason why, and I know every election cycle, as Nancy already said, that this is the most important one. No, really, this one is.
Yeah.
We really got to get out the vote. We really do on this one. I mean, I'm talking, and I know it's always, well, are the Black men going to show up? Yes, we are going to show up. Need I remind you, when those sisters on that Sunday night, 46,000 sisters, the very next day, 53,000 Black men said, we are standing with our sisters. So we got to get out the vote every opportunity. I appreciate programs such as yours, Wandala, that's talking about, this topic. I appreciate the leadership and the vision around this from Nancy with Urban League, because as she mentioned in the opening remarks, that we're going to not just stop here. Right. We got to take this show on the road to the campuses. I think she mentioned about Clark Atlanta.
Yes, we're headed
University
to Clark.
And others. But there's one other piece though, because my good sister Jasmine Crockett mentioned it, but I want to put an exclamation mark.
Okay.
The other thing that Project 2025 is going after is the 19th Amendment.
Yes.
Y'all all know what the 19th Amendment? That's when women had the right to vote. And we just celebrated women's equality.
Break it down, Derrick.
Okay. And JD Vance, out of all the folks Trump could have selected to be his VP runner, he said, JD Vance, that the 3 roles that a woman should have is be a grandmother, a wife, and a mother. That's it.
Yeah.
Now this man is married. He has 3 children. He said that's the only role a woman should have.
And
to
his
be a
wife
grand-
tried to come back and explain it, but she couldn't explain it.
She couldn't.
No, right. She couldn't do that.
She could not explain that away.
Mhm.
And so we got to get out the vote.
One other thing, Derrick, talk just before you go about voting down ballot. How critical it is all the way down the ballot, because sometimes people only vote for the president or only think about voting when there's a presidential election. But a president can only do so much if they have a congressional support system that is of the same ideologies around policies for families, businesses, and our communities.
That's right.
Yes.
Go ahead, Derrick.
You know, the construct of our government system, you have to have checks and balance.
Yes.
But the most important thing, a president can only do what that congressional legislative branch and the judicial branch. And so the most powerful thing that we can do come this November 5th, and for those of us voting early, need to vote early. I absolutely agree with you, Nancy. But the reason why it's important, because as much as Vice President Kamala Harris is talking about giving $25,000 to first, homeowners, bringing back the child tax credit,
right?
$6,900 would go to families with children, things of that nature. She can only do that and be enabled to do that if she has a House that will also make history when you have a Hakeem Jeffries as the first Black Speaker of the House, and then she has a Senate. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we were always conditioned to only vote for the president.
Right.
Those of us who grew up with Schoolhouse Rock, I'm dating myself here. So we were always taught every 4 years you vote for the president. But we got to deconstruct that mindset that we were conditioned with, Wanda. Yes. We got to say, you start at the top of the ticket and you go straight down the line. Don't skip no one. Don't put Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck in there. You vote Democratic. So that way it will enable her to do what she's talking about doing. She cannot do the John Lewis Voting Rights Act without a House and a Senate. She cannot do the George Floyd Police Act without a House and a Senate. She cannot do all the things that she's promising to do, and I believe she will do it. And we know this is true because once we got Barack Obama in 2008, and then the Tea Party, then that was the precursor of the MAGA, they came in 2010 and they stopped Barack Obama on everything. And he had to do everything by executive action. And executive action is only a law while that president is in office. We need someone, when she says, you get Roe v. Wade to her desk and she's going to sign into law, she needs the House, Hakeem Jeffries to be the speaker, and she needs the Senate. So we got to start at the top of the ticket, go all the way down, even down to the questions. Answer all the questions that are on the ballot. Don't skip nothing.
That's right. Because also, if you put the wrong people, when you vote all the way down in place and you vote for them, we'll get this Project 2025 that we do not want to happen. So it's important that we vote all the way down. I appreciate you, Representative Derrick. Nancy, what were you going to say?
And I also have to say, we are nonpartisan at the Urban League. So what we will say is you got to vote like-minded individuals down that ticket that have the values you want in your candidates and support the policies you support. Now, Derrick, he can say what he wants, but I just have to be on the record that Urban League does not tell people who to vote for, but what we do is say, get educated, do your research, make your plan, and make your own choice, but vote.
That's right.
And I'm going to say what my big sister King say, you vote blue. You vote blue.
Is that why you're wearing blue today? Is that why you're wearing blue? Thank you, Representative Derrick Jackson. We appreciate you and your voice and continue to do what you're doing. We're here for you as well. Thanks a lot now. Stay healthy.
Take care.
Stay connected, stay on point. We'll go to break, and coming up next, we've got attorney Christopher Bruce. We've got John Moye and more right here on Point with Wandolyn Stokes. Nancy Flake Johnson is here as well to answer your questions as we continue this conversation about Project 2025 Exposed. We'll be back. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that also too, Nancy, about you all being bipartisan, and certainly that's why you do the type of things that you do, and you're educating and creating awareness about what is out there so that people can make more informed decisions, and that's what's important, for this day. I know there's an event coming up, Clark Atlanta University, that's coming up real soon. And why did you say you want to go to the college campuses and share this same type of information, Nancy? Because that's happening, I believe it's on September 16th.
Well,
and we're going to let our
next
audience know
leaders.
more about it. Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear
Absolutely.
us? Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Yeah, you went out. You went out for a moment, but I hear you now.
So, okay. All right, great. So we're going to college campuses because they have to be involved and will really play a significant role, our young voters, in this election.
Yes.
And we want them to have their eyes wide open as they make their choices. And the other purpose is we're bringing the generations together. We don't want to be pitted against one another. We have to be leaning in and united. And the only way to do that is to listen to one another and to respect each other's opinions. And what I believe we're going to find, we all want the same things. And we will learn from each other in terms of strategies and tactics and a way of coming to solutions. That is what this is all about. Making life better. We're doing it.
Yeah, making it better for all. And this will take place on the campus of Clark Atlanta University, September the 19th. Now, we're going to let you know exactly what venue and exactly what time, but stay connected to the Urban League of Greater Atlanta and on point with Wandolyn Stokes, because we want you to come out. It's a conversation with multi-generations coming together and having the discussions about the things that concern them the most. And of course, this is very important. It's coming in person. It's almost like a town hall type of meeting, but we'll have guest panelists there, but as well as different generations talking, because this is a critical conversation, and it's important for each of us generations to just inform each other. Sometimes your concerns are different from our concerns. So we want to bridge generations, and look at the state of Black Georgia conversation. Would you say that Nancy, that's the focus at 1:00? On
I would. And we're calling it Bridging. Yes. We are calling it Bridging Generations, the State of Black Georgia Conversation. And you may recall the Urban League published a report on the state of Black Georgia. And all of this, folks, at the end of the day, we want to improve the state of Black Georgia, the state of Black America. And when we're doing well, everybody's doing well. So it's not a separatist thing, but we're the furthest behind. We need some focus and support. And that's what we're doing unapologetically. Yeah. And we're here to work collaboratively with others.
Absolutely. Working collaboratively with others and certainly inviting.
So coming up next, who do we have next?
Well, I have attorney Christopher Bruce that's coming up. Christopher, are you here? Christopher, now before he comes up, Christopher is a lawyer and lobbyist and a local Black man who serves as the senior advisor to the Southern Collective and Policy and Advocacy Director at the ACLU. That's the American Civil Liberties Union of Georgia. He is certainly committed to social justice. He's dedicated his career to advancing civil liberties and even protecting constitutional rights of all individuals. And I certainly want to bring him on shortly so that we can have a discussion with him as well as about Project 2025.
Here he
listen,
is.
I'm glad to have you, Christopher. How are you today? Welcome. How are you doing?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm doing great. You know, I'm still Black in a Black city with Black people, with Black, beautiful women on the phone. I mean, things couldn't be better. So happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. Let's jump right in. You know, what voter rights are being challenged today? You know, in both like blue and red states. What are those voter rights as you talk about voter suppression and poll workers and all of that? What's being challenged today?
Well, I think it should be a different question. What's not being challenged?
Oh,
that's the problem.
That's
right?
Good.
Like ever since Black people had the right to vote, they've been trying to take it away from us.
Yeah.
Why have they been trying to take it away from us? It's because of the power that goes along within it. So when they talk about, oh, absentee ballots have gone up, skyrocketed during COVID. And what happened when that happened? More Black people were voting. Well, let's shut that down. And now to the point where you cannot do absentee balloting in Georgia in an efficient and impactful way. The mail services and getting things through, you have to put in different requirements. They make it purposefully. And let me emphasize that. It is an intentional way of making sure that it's harder for you to vote. Drop boxes. That was another case. Like drop boxes, a very safe way of putting your absentee ballot in a box so people could vote.
Right.
Again, COVID exposure. They took that away. They're trying to eliminate everything. Refusing to provide ballots in the language of the people who are still citizens of the United States, still have every full credit to vote, and yet not putting it in languages that they can actually understand. Denial of voting assistance. There are people who are actually here who need assistance. They have disabilities where they cannot get up and go vote. Why are we disenfranchising them? Polling places being moved at the last minute. These are classic tactics that have happened, not just now, but they've happened all the way before. But now in states, and I'll go to my second point, when it comes to these voter challenges, like what's going on, this new type of voter suppression, where I am literally saying you do not have the right to vote. Your vote doesn't count. And this has been done by political parties, private citizens, elected officials, going in and saying, well, I don't like the way he talks. I don't like what she does.
Yeah.
He may not vote the way that I want, because voting is still supposed to be a private act.
Right.
Nobody's supposed to know how you voted. Why are you challenging me and my residency requirements on voting? We have a whole system of government who's been doing this for over 400 years about how voting. And you out of nowhere with no evidence have come up and challenged people's right to vote. Well, let me go into the big one. As y'all know, the Georgia State Election Board has decided on passing rules of saying, hey, well, the Board of Elections wants to do an inquiry into voting that may delay certifying. And let me be clear, as an attorney and as a local Black man, as a lobbyist, as any and everybody, as a Christian, the law says that the Board of Elections shall certify. That emphasis under shall. There's no question of if, there's no when, there's no may. It says shall. That is a direct order for you to actually follow the law. Anything that's anything different goes in jeopardy of the law. It is completely illegal, and it's something that they're using to change our voting process altogether. So these are happening not only in red states, they're happening in blue states, they're happening all around, but they're mostly happening to Black people in our community. And that's why I'm happy to be here to fight back with you, Wandling. That you spread about this, and I'm happy always to be with Nancy Flake Johnson. That is my CEO, always has been, always will be. I would tell you this, I would not be the advocate I am if it wasn't for the Urban League. Nancy does an amazing job of bringing up the next generation of leaders. So, but she's my leader. So when Nancy calls, I always answer.
That's great. That's great. Tell us about some of the work you've done with Stacey Abrams, Nikema Williams, Congresswoman, and even Senator Raphael Warnock, in your efforts.
Andrea Young,
Yeah.
who's the president of ACLU, the executive director.
Right. I could not be here without the amazing experiences of Andrea Young, Ambassador Young's daughter. In fact, when I was offered this job, I honestly was like, I don't know if I want to do it.
Okay.
They said Andrea Young was going to be the executive director. I was like, well, this is a phenomenal opportunity to learn under one of the best.
That's great.
Yeah, and she's provided some of the best leadership possible to fight on voter suppression. I'm trying to figure out what story I want to start with. You know what? I'll start with Congresswoman Nikema Williams, but I'm not going to start when she was Congresswoman for the Fighting Fifth for John Lewis. I'm going to start when she was the head of Planned Parenthood Southeast, and she was the main lobbyist. I, being a new lobbyist, literally a rookie in 2017, walking down the hall under the Gold Dome, that's Georgia State's capital, and out of nowhere, Nikema, and look, I'm 6'1". Nikema's got to be like 5'6" or something. Nikema slams this bill in my chest as hard as possible. She said, "This is a gerrymandering bill. This is something that's completely illegal. It's going to impact Black people. And the ACLU, meaning you, Chris Bruce, better kill it." Literally, like, I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "Get to work." So I called up our national office. I called up Andrea. We got some talking points into some elected officials. We rallied around other advocates, including the Urban League. And luckily, we were able to kill that bill. So I'm happy to say about that. Like,
that's good.
Nikema has not been just doing this, like, just all of a sudden when it became popular. She's been fighting for voting rights before she was a congresswoman. And the same as Senator Warnock. I remember as Pastor Warnock in 2017 as well. There was a bill that was going to roll back the voting times in the city of Atlanta, another classic voter suppression bill. So getting together other advocates, I held a press conference, and of course, the best speaker had to be Pastor Warnock at the time. Yeah. Got us all the press possible, put in all the pressure. And again, that bill was killed because of those efforts. So before they get in these positions of prominence,
they've been working
they were doing the work.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about Project 2025? What are some things that concern you? I know there's a whole lot in there, but just pick some things that really concern you and why it should concern the American public.
We're talking about abortion access, mass deportations, using warrantless surveillance, which again happens in our Black and brown communities more than any other community, unleashing the force against protesters, people who are exercising their First Amendment rights. We already talked about voting. That's always going to be something. Censoring discussions, literally eliminating teaching about African-American history, our history. That happens. Those are the problems that are happening with Project 2025. Just a brief snippet. But you know what really concerns me about Project 2025 is we keep talking about if former President Donald Trump gets implemented, he has a blueprint, that over 900-page manifesto, and we have to stop Project 2025. People, let me tell you, and I know I'm not the first one to say it, so I'm definitely not going to be the last. Project 2025 is already being implemented.
It is.
These things that are happening in our communities, again, voter suppression, that's part of Project 2025. This attack on abortion, healthcare, this attack on women, Project 2025. Everything that has to deal with protesters, using your First Amendment rights, Project 2025. Saying what jobs you can and cannot have. Those are still being implemented to this day in Project 2025. So let's look at the document, let's learn it, but let's also, again, and this is why, again, I give all props to Nancy for this. We can't just deal with Project 2025. We have to put something forward ourselves.
Yes.
The state of Black Georgia, the state of Black America. What are we going to do? What is our Project 2025? What is going to take us in the distance in the future to say that we're enriching our communities and our culture? So
that's good.
And you know what? That's what my daughter said to me when I first brought up Project 2025. She said, I know about that. What's our Project 2025? And,
right.
you know, That just says it all, which is why you have to listen to our next generations. We've got to have the plan. And so it is defend democracy, it is demand diversity, and it is destroy poverty for the Urban League.
Absolutely.
But we all got more to do.
That's right. The work doesn't stop here. We'll go to break and we'll be back with more right here on Point with Wandel Stokes as we're talking about Project 2025 Exposed and sharing a lot of information with you. Nancy Flake Johnson, Christopher Bruce sharing with us now. We'll go to break and we'll be right back. Make sure you like and share it. That's right. Share, because this conversation has to get out to the masses. Thank you so much. We'll go to break. We'll be right back. Christopher Bruce, we're still live, video-wise. What are the things that we can do? What can we do to prevent, to stop? What are some of the things that we can do? Because if you talk about voting, then sometimes you'll have the community to say, well, voting doesn't do it all. What are some of the things that we can do in addition to voting?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Like, this is one of the critical pieces where I think both parties fail. And again, I'm a nonpartisan person. So to go out up front, I work for a nonpartisan organization, telling people to vote, you're putting Republicans in power. You're putting Democrats in power. Let's start putting the people in power. And the first step is voting, yes. But then the second step is holding people accountable. The person who says, I have this platform of saying, well, if you're a first-time home buyer, I'm going to give you $25,000. Well, we're going to hold you to that if you get elected. If you get elected and you say, well, I'm going to expand voting process, we're going to hold you to that. So the question is always, we always ask people, do you know your elected official? That's not the question. Does your elected official know you?
Know you.
Are they coming to you and asking you for your question? Because they represent you.
Right.
It's the other way around. In fact, you get taxed, literally. They work for you. You get taxed on this issue. So there is something, and Wandel, you have some amazing listeners who ask the best questions possible. So just saying voting is not enough. It's not. They need to be more active in their state, local commissioners, everything, where these elected officials, because there's something in their minds of there's one issue, at least one issue that they care about. If your elected official does not know that issue and does not hear it from you, then you failed the process. You're the reason why we keep repeating this all together. Mm-hmm. And if you need help on how to do that, contacting them, you can contact me. I will walk you up to them personally and help you talk to them up front. But once you get it one time, it'll fly off.
Yeah, yeah. What are the concerns of workers today? What are the concerns in the job market of people today?
Well, there's no question about there are people who are hurting. And people are going to blame it against President Joe Biden's administration. They're blaming it on previous administration or anything else. When it comes down to it, you can blame whoever you want. If I can't afford eggs, if I can't afford milk, if I can't afford to pay for my family's bills or anything else, I need help. So people, the economy, while it is growing and expanding, the question is, who is it growing and expanding for? So keep hearing that the economy is great. Yeah, but for who? Yeah. If my wages have not gone up, then it's not great for me. If I can't afford another house, it's not great for me. Shoot, if my taxes are going up to the point I can't even afford my own mortgage, it's not great for me. If the education levels for these things, that's not great for me. And that's my point. There are less people who are going to college or technical colleges right now than ever before. So you're not going to get this pipeline of professionalism. The job market can change altogether. I'm not trying to tell people you have to go to college or anything else, but you do have to be educated in these professions. Mm-hmm. And the professions are going to change, especially with the implementation of AI. These simple tasks and jobs are going to go away. They're going to be more complicated jobs, and we don't have the resources of doing that. We're going to eliminate our workers altogether, and then we're going to have another issue that we're going to deal with. And again, when America catches a cold, Black people catch the flu. So if you think it's going to be a problem for just Americans, Black people in our communities, we're going to be hit the hardest.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm glad you shared that. You really paint a great picture as to where we are and the concerns of workers today. Thank you so very much for sharing with us. You've been so insightful, and we appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been phenomenal. I love you both.
Yeah, we love you too.
Stay Black. Stay Black.
Love you.
Stay Black. Right. Nancy Flake Johnson, working on a part of your team next is coming up, Chris. And certainly he's going to add to this conversation. John is going to add to this conversation about Project 2025. John, Senior Director of the Office of Policy, Legislative Affairs, and Civic Engagement for the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. How are you doing?
Wonderland, how are you?
I'm doing great. We're overseeing the Center for Social Justice and Civic Engagement. Tell us, when you think of social justice, what is that? How do you describe and define social justice?
I think it's the liberation of Black people. I mean, if you take a look at where we are the last 400 years, when I think of social justice, I think of everything that Derrick talked about, the 13th Amendment, the 15th, 16th, the 19th Amendment. It's about moving Black folks forward so that everything that Chris just talked about, right? The opportunity to send your kid to school, the opportunity to feel safe, from a rogue police officer, be able to feed your family. That's liberation. That's moving forward, at least for me anyway.
Yeah. As it relates to like Project 2025, what type of legislations have been proposed, even now, presented, passed, that are concerning to you for our community?
It's certainly, it's D, all of the above. And just to certainly add to what Chris was saying, if you take a look at where the court has been over the last, since 2013 with Shelby, right? 2013 with Shelby, that gutted the Voting Rights Act. So they've been on this long train. If you take a look at the Chevron case most recently, where basically, gutting the ability, normally, the court would defer to agencies if it's in terms of EPA, in terms of clean drinking water, they've gutted that. If you take a look at Miranda rights, where a police officer would say you have the right to remain silent. Well, a police officer doesn't have to do that anymore. And if he doesn't do that, and those statements are used against you, you are unable to sue that police officer. So they're not waiting. There's been a long train. They are moving forward right now. Let's talk about Roe v. Wade or Miranda. Vega versus Toka. So they are moving forward right. Or affirmative action. Let's talk about that. I mean, in the last few sessions of the court.
Yeah.
Affirmative action, civil rights. I mean, on and on and on, and it's almost death by 1,000 cuts. So we have to make sure that our people are vigilant about this stuff. And so. I had a chance to meet Thurgood Marshall when I was about 21 years old, to meet Justice Marshall at a dinner somewhere in New York City. Wow. And I remember it as if it were yesterday, but those gains with Brown v. Board of Education back in '54, all the stuff that Lyndon Johnson did with the Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, I mean, it's a steady erosion of those rights. And so we have to be vigilant right now in terms of making sure that our people are educated and they know what's going on.
What are your thoughts about the impact of this Project 2025 on democracy itself?
For those of us who are a little bit nerdy, I was sort of that nerdy kid, always in social studies classes. I actually read the Federalist Papers, and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, it goes against everything that we hold dear as Americans. I mean, irrespective of where you stand, it's the universal right. We have a universal right to be free, and that's whether it meant something for Black folks or not at the founding of the Republic. But we bought into that because we believe that, and we believe it's beyond Democrats or Republicans. It's the universal right. So it's a complete erosion of everything that we believe in this country as a democracy. I mean, and ready for this? Let me say this to you, and I often say this to Ms. Johnson, who is also my hero. She is a tremendous leader, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to serve. They're not that smart enough to put it back. If they break it,
I see.
I'm telling you, they ain't that smart to put it back. They're just not.
They don't want to put it back.
They don't want to put it back. They do not.
What type of policies, and just a couple of them, would you like to see written, passed right now? What are some policies that are of concern to you and that should be of concern to us at large right now? Just some of the.
As a Black man, the John Lewis Act, protecting. I mean, I have 2 sons, and I have grandsons.
Yes.
And as me personally, I worry about getting pulled over by a police officer. I forget the fact that I went to college, forget the fact that I'm a homeowner, forget the fact that I'm articulate, as people say. They don't see that.
Yeah.
So just basic protections for that. And then also, the John Lewis Voting Act. We have to protect the right to vote. I mean, without that, that's the bedrock of this whole thing.
Yes.
I mean, without the ability to vote, it's game over for all of us. And so those are two things I'd like to see, at least to make sure that we're protected from being assaulted.
George Floyd.
Thank you, Johnson, for that, and voting rights, at least here. And then also for listen, I have 3 daughters. I mean, let's listen. Let's, in a nonpartisan way, let's make sure that our community supports folks that will codify, that will shore up, reproductive rights. I don't want somebody telling my daughter what they can do with their body. That's outrageous. But without folks in the House and Senate that reflects our opinions, we're all doomed. And if you take a look, one last thing, if you take a look at those cases that I just cited, whether it was Shelby or the Chevron case, or civil or abortion or affirmative action, it's been 6-3 decisions the whole way. So for us, it's been Kagan, Sotomayor, and Justice Jackson, who's sort of been holding the line in this stuff. But absent of that, we're in serious trouble. I mean, 3 justices against 6 justices that are hell bent on eroding what's taken us 70 years since Brown versus Board. They are hell bent on eroding all of it, and they're doing it right now as we speak.
Yeah, that's what Representative Jackson was talking about. They're doing it right now. To prepare a voter, what are some of the key things that voters should do right now in preparing themselves to go to the polls in November?
Have a plan. I often, who is your state representative? Who is your county commissioner? What are the issues on the ballot? When you walk in, me personally, okay, where am I going to vote? Nancy's absolutely right. Go to my voter page with the Secretary of State. See if you've been purged, and then find out. And because of redistricting now, the polling sites may have changed. So where do I vote? What time is it open? And then when you get there, there's no rush. May I have a copy of the ballot, please, so that you know who's on the ballot and what initiatives are on those ballots.
And get that in advance, John.
And get it in advance.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Get a ballot before you show up.
That's
you know
right.
what? I have a process. A friend of mine and I, we get on Zoom. We put the ballot up. We go down the list. And if we don't know the people, between us, we Google them and read up on their records.
That's right.
And decide. Because, back in the day, I hate to admit it, I would just look at names and I don't really sound sort of ridiculous.
Right.
And here I am, So that is, and it's fun. Actually, it makes you feel empowered. It doesn't take a lot of time, but get that ballot in advance. And I just want to come back to, for all the folks out there, and we serve them every day that are struggling right now. There are a lot of reasons for it, but here's the thing: because Urban League has support under, for our work, right? We can help you get over the hump. There's education. We can tap you into it for free. You want a better job. We want to help you research that. We know people are working 2 jobs to make one work. And a lot of that is driven by the cost of housing. There's nothing more fundamental than having a roof over one's head. And after the pandemic, landlords in this state have free reign to increase rents with no caps. You know why? Because the state legislature doesn't have the interest of the working and the poor at heart to pass a bill that simply says, don't raise the rents past a fair amount that people can afford. It's real simple. Make sure that landlords have maintained properties in livable conditions.
Yes.
These are basics, y'all. So why are we continuing to vote these same people in? Now, I know gerrymandering is making it harder to get the representation we need, but our numbers in this state are strong. When we combine with the Latino community, the white community that wants us to live in peace and harmony and get this thing right, the Asian community, all of us together who say we can live together peacefully where everybody has a shot to live well. We band together, and I believe that group, you can call us what you want, we're in a majority. But if we don't all galvanize and vote, then we have no power. And that is what we want to impose, really appeal to people. We're here to help you figure it out. And without resources, without a climate that supports DEI, which is what we're about, we can't be here for you.
Right.
And candidly, since COVID, we've given out $8-9 million to keep our families safe. Not all political affiliations believe in that kind of support going to the people. So you got to have the right hearts and minds in these seats so that the organizations and the people and the governments that want to do it the right way have the resources. And then we got to hold them accountable to it.
And if I can do the last thing for me, Adam Clayton Powell said 60 years ago, "What's in your hand?" He said that. So what we're talking about here today is Black power. Let's be clear about what it is. When we show up, they either win or lose. The former president said to the Secretary of State, "I need 11,780 votes." Whether it was Atlanta, whether it was Philadelphia, whether it was in Detroit, we make presidents of the United States, the Black community. We're talking about Black power. We're the difference between them taking the White House or not. So I think we have to also understand it's Black power that will drive whether or not, if we come to the polls and we do what we're supposed to do, we can push back on Project 2025 and push them back to where it belongs, which is in the garbage can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, John. We'll go to break and
you're amazing, Wonderland.
Thank you.
Okay, we love you.
We'll go to break and we'll be back with announcements and updates as to what is going to happen next. We'll go to break. It's On Point with Wandalyn Stokes. John, this is great. Nancy,
I hate to have to jump, but John's going to close you out.
I got it. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you. Yeah, with the Urban League of Great Atlanta.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you,
Ariel. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
John, there's so many concerns out there, in the marketplace. And what are your thoughts about how this will impact the economy? We haven't talked about that a lot today, with the economy, inflation, maybe on the verge of a recession. How will this impact the economy if this were to go forward?
It was funny. I was sharing with my daughter the other day, just to put it, in perspective. And so say there are two boats, and one boat, I have nothing against China, but let's say it's a boat representing, China and certainly in Russia, who are our main competitors in the world. And they have a full team rowing the boat. And yet, on the American team, there are folks who are deciding you don't get to row the boat. You don't get an oar, maybe because for whatever reason. And it's just not in America's interest. This is just regressive. We are in a global competitive environment. And there are really people out there trying to take our lunch in terms of making sure that we win. We have to make sure that all of our folks are educated. We don't have the luxury now, as the world is changing, as the economy is changing. We don't have the luxury of having large parts of the population either incarcerated or just being not uneducated. It just doesn't make dollars and cents in the long term. Mm-hmm. So it's something that I think Jesse Jackson, God bless him, Reverend Jackson used to say, the rising tides lifts all boats, and it does. And so I think it's regressive, Project 2025. With respect to the current economy, listen, look, I think we have to make sure that we elect people who are progressive about working families, making sure. Listen, right now at the state legislature, I am also the Urban League's lobbyist. So right now, let's talk about just Georgia for a moment. We want to make sure that we can expand Medicaid to all Georgians. Why shouldn't we be able to make sure that that folks, that HBCUs are properly funded? I mean, things that are important. Home right here. Why shouldn't we raise the minimum wage in the state of Georgia? It should be raised. So I mean, that is driven by votes, and that's driven by personal economies, and so it's important also at home as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The minimum wage certainly needs to go up. It's ridiculous. I mean, you can't even you can't eat and live in a decent 1-bedroom apartment on that current wage level. But certainly, we've got to continue to fight. What are your closing words and thoughts for today, John?
My great grandmother is 96 years old, and whenever I see my grandmother, she took a picture of her grandfather in South Carolina with her Kodak Brownie camera in 1930s. And I hold the hand of a woman that held the hand of a slave. And that's how close it is. And she's still alive. And so freedom ain't free. And for her, and for Dr. King, and for Fannie Lou Hamer, and for all the people whose shoulders we stand on, we have a charge to keep.
Yes.
And we have to make sure that when we hand it off to our children, it's better than when we found it. So please, my message is to all folks: vote, show up, participate, write a check, knock on a door, make a phone call, take somebody with you to a poll. And if you have if you have a problem, then you run for office, run for county. But this is a participatory democracy, and you as a citizen have to be a part of it and involved.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, John. We appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. Much love to you.
Much love to
you.
All right. Thank you.
God bless you. We are live right here on Point with Wandel Stokes, and we've been talking about Project 2025 Expose, making sure that we get information out to you about all of the challenges that if this is moving forward, it will certainly impact our communities and our everyday lives. When we think about the job industry, the economy, when we think about Medicare and Medicaid, when we think about releasing and getting rid of the Department of Education, the Department of Justice, and more, these things will impact all of us drastically. And this is why this conversation has to be held. One of the things that State Representative Derrick Jackson mentioned is about the Senate Bill 202 and the Senate Bill 189. Those are two voting bills that even help to create this whole situation that we have as it relates to our voting rights. And so now, while you have an opportunity, prepare yourself to vote. Read up, make sure that you are aware of all of the issues and all of the things that concern you so that you can be informed when you go to the polls. As we continue this conversation on Point with Wandel Stokes, I hope those of you who are watching are liking and sharing this video with others so that we can let others know about this conversation. Sometimes when you are more informed, then you're more aware of what's happening and you become an informed voter. There are a lot of things that we're doing. We're hitting the ground so that we can keep this message out and let you know you've got to vote, let you know your voting rights, let you know how to vote, let you know about Project 2025 and more. I want to call now project manager lead for the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. Ariel, are you here? Ariel Coleman, a pleasant good afternoon. We started in the morning, but
Yes.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well. What an amazing conversation that we had today. So thank you for allowing us to be on your platform. And this is a conversation that we're going to continue. So we've had the barbershop talks where we were able to speak to Black men at our local barbershop school in Southwest Atlanta. Now we're having this conversation on your platform, and we're going to continue this conversation at Clark Atlanta and make it even bigger in October, because we're trying to mobilize and get everybody out to vote. So as you can see behind me, Reclaim Your Vote. That's our campaign. Stop Project 2025. That's another campaign. So we're excited about that. So I'm here to share some important information. If you're ready, I can just share all that information.
I'm ready. Yes, we are ready.
Yes. Okay. So register to vote. That's the first thing. Everyone register to vote. Even if you think you're registered to vote, please check your voter status, because it changes. It could change. And we need to make sure that everyone's registered. Make sure your address is up to date. Make sure the spelling of your name matches what's on your ID. Just make sure you go into the system and check out that Monday, the last day to register to vote in Georgia is Monday, October 7th. Again, the last day to register to vote
is Monday, October the 7th.
Georgia is Monday, October 7th. Absentee ballots begin. Yes, Monday, October 7th is a key date. Check your voting options. Like, Georgia has early voting available. Early voting begins October 15th. So we know that early voting is important. So let's get to those polls early. October 15th, take a friend. Ms. Johnson always says this: take a neighbor, take a friend, take your family members. Let's have a party to the voting polls so we can get everyone there early to vote. We don't want to wait in long lines. We don't want to have mishaps at the actual voting polls. So let's get there early. And if we can't get there early, it ends November 1st. So let's get there by November 1st to vote.
That's great.
Yes, and the last day to return your absentee ballot is November 1st as well.
That's great. Tell us about the event at Clark Atlanta University.
Yes, so we have met with the leadership at Clark Atlanta University, and this is not our first time at Clark. We've been at Clark a few times, where we did a rally in 2022, and now we are here having conversations, these important conversations that's bridging the gap from the younger generation and more of the seasoned leaders in Atlanta, how we as a Black community can come together and create what we want for moving forward, because it doesn't end at this election. It goes beyond this. So that's where we are now. It's like, what is next? What are we doing for our community? How are we going to mobilize together and come together as leaders? So these conversations are important to have with the younger generation, so we can see where they are and how we can bridge that gap and lead each other to a better future.
That's wonderful. And what's the date? What time? Where's it going to take place on the campus?
So the date is September 19th, and it's happening. It is an intimate in-person conversation. However, we are streaming live. So we will have student leaders from Clark, Morehouse, Spelman, and Morris Brown, as well as some of their presidents from all those universities. And we will have some of the leaders that we had online today be present during this conversation, plus more. So it is happening from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on September 19th, and it will be in the presidential boardroom.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much. It has been amazing today, this conversation and all of your work with your team there at the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. Thank you. to all of you. And certainly we'll be partnering with September and the other events. So we're going to continue this conversation and get the word out. Thank you so very much to you, your team, Nancy Flake Johnson, the National Urban League as well. And thank you to my executive producer, Chantel Thompson. Thank you so very much, working behind the scenes and making sure all of this comes together. Thank you so very much. And thank you to our brand manager, Joyce Littell, and 1380 WAOK. And to our On Point with Wandel Stokes community, you know what we always do. We'll always keep you on point. We'll go to break, and we'll be back with more News and Talk 1380 WAOK. We're going to keep this ball rolling here on Point with Wandel and Stokes. This has really been a great conversation, and even with all of our panelists who took the time out of their busy schedules, who are certainly working behind the scenes and even in front to really help make a difference in our communities. And so I certainly appreciate all of our guests. Nancy Flake Johnson, with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. You just heard her. Also, we're certainly delighted. Our special guest, U.S. Representative, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, joined us today, and we're glad for her information and insight as she talked to us about Project 2025. John Moye from the Urban League, thank you. Attorney Christopher Bruce, we appreciate you as well. Tara Murray from the National Office of the Urban League was with us today. Awesome job in talking about stopping Project 2025. And also Representative Derrick Jackson, who had on his blue suit. He said, let's keep it blue, right? And thank you to all of this information from our panel of experts has really been very concise and very informative. And this is why we wanted to bring this to you, because it's about informing you about what's happening. Our democracy is at stake. When you think about the average worker, that is at stake. When you think about healthcare, that is at stake as well. And so these things are important. I want you, our audience, to make sure that you follow me. I'm on WAOK. You can download the Odyssey app. You can tell Alexa, hey, take me to WAOK. Every day, 10 a.m. until 1 p.m., Monday through Friday, we bring you news, we bring you talk, we bring you information. I have conversation with you. I talk about a lot of things from healthcare, climate control, political matters, fashion, mental health. We talk about it all, and we keep you covered. And so that's weekdays, 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. For us, at On Point, it's all about living well and winning well, living well every day. That's why we bring the experts to you to talk about affordable housing, to talk about the economy. We have features every week, a Medical Monday. We talk about your health. We have Sister Talk. We talk with women from across this world. We also have our law and legal. We have that feature as well, where we talk about all things legal. And even on Fridays, we have just an open, candid conversation. And even on Thursdays, it's about financial wellness. I do have a financial wellness workshop that is coming up on September the 7th. And listen, you can be a part of it. It's absolutely free. I want to empower you and keep you on point when it comes to our finances as well. So thank you so very much for joining this conversation. Kennedy Smith, awesome job. Ms. Coleman, awesome job. I mean, so many people behind the scenes working and helping to make this possible for you. Again, to Chantel Thompson, our executive producer, we appreciate you as well. We will go to break, and I think we're going to come back shortly. So make sure that you stay connected. Also, make sure that you follow us on our social media pages. Now, you can follow us on WAOK. You can follow us on Facebook, WAOK. Also, you can follow me on Facebook, On Point with Wandolyn Stokes. And then don't forget on IG, make sure you follow us now, because this is how we keep you informed and up to date with everything that's going on with On Point with Wandolyn Stokes. On IG, it's Wandolyn Stokes. On IG, it's WAOK. We've been around as a station for 60 plus years. We are the voice of the community. So it's important for us, it's important for On Point to bring you information, to bring you topics, to have discussions with you about things that concern your everyday life. But it's also important that we hear your voice. Your voice is important. That's why we news and talk, because sometimes it's so important for me, and I love it when I have the opportunity to talk with our listeners about things that are on your mind, things that we agree, and some things we disagree, but we've got to have the conversation about it. And that's what makes On Point with Wandolyn Stokes so unique. So I look forward to connecting with you. If I haven't already, make sure you reach out and connect with us. And for those of you who are just now tuning in via Facebook or our YouTube page, make sure you subscribe to WAOK's YouTube page. Make sure on Facebook, hey, that you share this video, get the word out, because we want you to be informed. We want you to know. That's what it's all about. And certainly when we unify and get the word out, you can be more informed as a voter, as a resident, as a citizen of the United States of America. So listen, it's been great. It's been good. I love to keep it positive. I love to keep the energy flowing. And we'll be back on tomorrow to share with you again at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Friday, it's our free-flowing Friday. So on Fridays, we allow you, hey, listen, you call in and you lead with the topics that are on your mind. And so I'm looking forward to it. So if you don't have the phone number to WAOK, here it is, 404-726-1380. You say, Wandolyn Stokes, I can't wait to call in tomorrow. I can't wait to ask you some questions. I can't wait to bring up some conversations. That's what we can do. Well, listen, have a great one, everybody. As I always say, keep smiling, because a smile will increase your face value. Have a great day. This is your friend and sister girl, Wandolyn Stokes, host of On Point with Wandolyn Stokes and News and Talk 1380 WAOK. Keep it positive.